Hey folks, Eddie from Totally Wired Guitars here, and today we are going to be continuing our shootout between the Squier Classic Vibe Bass 6 and this Fender Vintera II 60s Bass 6, which we are going to be unboxing. So I am super excited about this. I am shocked actually that nobody has brought me one of these for service or a setup. Maybe that speaks volumes as far as what the factory setup is like. Maybe it's quite good. So I'm really looking forward to this overall. And we will just get rid of these little sharp staples that were on the top, huge sharp staples, so that nobody ends up stepping on them or my cats don't try to eat it. So the first thing that we've got in the box here is the little manual or paperwork that comes with it, as well as the tremolo arm. It is the pop-in variant that they've been using on all of the Vintera II offset models like the Jazzmaster and the Jaguar. Ooh, so there's no bubble wrap or anything inside of the box, but you can see here that it does come inside of a pretty nice Fender Deluxe bass case here. It's nice and padded. It's soft. These are my favorite kinds of soft cases as far as cheaper ones go. So much like the Squier, this one also is coming in this like styrofoam wrap to protect it a bit. Oh boy, I am super stoked to try this thing out. I have been wanting to for so long. I hate that noise. So again, thank you to the kind folks at Zounds for sending this thing over for me to try out and review. All right, so out of the box, this thing has got some kind of silicone pack sandwiched between the strings and the fretboard. Okay, we've got a number of different hang tags, the inspection tag as well. Let's go ahead and pop our vibrato arm in very quickly so that we can get the full experience from the jump. You can see this one has the like chamfered little tip here at the end, very similar again to the way that they are on the AVRI units. They might even be compatible with one another. I haven't tested that. And just a little bit of a push and it locks. And nicely, unlike the Classic Vibe, I'm not feeling metal grinding on metal too much here. Maybe the tiniest bit, but definitely not nearly as bad. It feels a bit more fluid to move because I'm not getting as much friction, and overall not as noisy. So that is nice. From the factory, it's set at a pretty decent angle, natural angle that I personally would prefer it to be set up to. And it already has a nice bend in it overall, so it's not dead straight, which is great. So let's go ahead and just quickly tune this thing up. And then I'll just give you a couple of my first impressions before we go ahead and plug this in and play it through. The tuners here are nice and tight, very responsive. I'm not really getting any slip right now from these tuners. A couple of things that I'm already noting right out of the box with this as compared to the Classic Vibe Bass 6. The first thing is that the action is set quite high, like a lot higher than I definitely would like for it to be. I don't know if Fender Mexico was just being really conservative with the settings, or they've set it this way to hide bad fretwork. So we are going to see, but definitely from the factory right now, this definitely feels a lot more uncomfortable to play than the Squier Classic Vibe Bass 6, which is surprising. So we're going to go ahead before we move on, because I want to give this a fair shot, we're going to have to throw this thing on the bench and at minimum just adjust the bridge height to just be a bit more comfortable. Another thing that I'm noticing is that these strings might be a bit thicker than the ones that they are putting on the Classic Vibe. Remember, the Classic Vibe ones were 24 to 84 gauge. So I'm curious to see how heavy the strings that they put on this one are. But before we get too into the weeds with all of these things, let's just go over a couple of specs on the Vintera II Bass 6. So starting off with the bodies on these are Alder. This is a polyurethane finish throughout, much like the Squier. This does feature that Vintera vintage style vibrato unit, as well as the vintage style bridge with the larger, wider bass overall. This has Vintera II special wound single coil Jaguar style pickups in it. It's got CTS pots in the lead control circuit for both your volume and tone, as well as switchcraft switches, which we will find out later, for all of your independent pickup selection switches, as well as your bass cut or strangle switch. Now, this also features a maple neck with a 7 1/4 radius, as well as a rosewood fretboard, white dot and side inlays. We've also got, unlike the Squier Classic Vibe, this one has vintage tall frets rather than narrow tall. So these are just about 5/1000ths of an inch taller than your standard vintage size frets, but they are the same width, I believe, as normal vintage frets. Now, this is shocking, especially at the price point. I don't know how Fender justifies doing this on a model that is basically 3 times as expensive as the Classic Vibe. But unlike the actual bone nut that's on the Classic Vibe, this one here has a synthetic bone nut, which is disappointing to see, especially at a guitar / bass of this price point. Continuing on with the neck, this also features 6 Kluson style vintage tuners on here. These are most likely made by Ping, and the same that come on a lot of made in Mexico vintage style models. Just now, when I was tuning, they felt pretty good overall and stable, and I wasn't getting any slipping, so not something that you would need to try to switch out right away. And another thing that I forgot to mention when we were talking about the electronics was the fact that there unfortunately is no shielding of the body cavities or routes under here, which again is pretty disappointing, especially at this price point, because that is something that you will find on the much cheaper Squier. So I am interested to see what the noise level is like of these Vintera pickups. If I am to speak from previous experiences, like with the Vintera II Jaguar and the Vintera II Jazzmaster, unfortunately, despite being, I think, more premium crafted pickups overall than the Squier, for whatever reason, all of the Vintera pickups that I've tried, starting even with the first Vintera series, have been a lot noisier than, the Squier ones, and even the pure vintage pickups that they release for all the offset models. So hopefully this is not super duper noisy. Moving on to the overall feel, this is a chunky feeling neck, and that might be informed by the fact that this is the action set here from the factory is a lot higher, but it does feel like it feels chunkier with regards to width, and we will find out. But the one thing that I am noticing is that up here at the nut definitely does feel narrower. So I just quickly looked up these specs, and unlike the nut width on the Squier Classic Vibe, which is 1.685 inches wide, this one is the standard 42 millimeter nut width that you are going to find on pretty much all of the modern and vintage reissue Jaguars and Jazzmasters that Fender has been putting out. Now, running my hands along the edges, I'm not really getting any fret sprout here, which is really nice to see. I'm not sure what the fret work looks like, or if there are a ton of high frets from the factory until we put this thing on the bench. But aside from that, overall, it feels good. It feels substantial. I'm not going to say right now that this is undoubtedly better than the Squier Classic Vibe just upon first impressions. Certainly at this point in time, not better by $1,000+ but I'm excited to see what this thing feels like once we've dialed it in a little bit. I might change my tune once I'm able to lower the bridge. One other thing that I do want to note, if you look closely here at this bridge, okay, you can see that unlike the Mustang bridge on the Squier, because this does have the vintage threaded style saddles on here, that the string spacing from the factory is not very consistent, right? You can see that there is like less space between the low E and the A string as compared to the A and the D string. And so that's another thing. And I think one of the reasons why folks hate these kinds of Jazzmaster Jaguar vintage style bridges is because, yeah, that's yet another thing that they have to think about and get right before they can just go ahead and enjoy it. We're going to go ahead and check too that the radius is properly set on this thing once we actually have it on the bench. And the very first thing that we are going to do is to just lower this bridge and see how it feels. All right, so we've got this thing on the bench now, and I'm not sure what size grubs or set screws this thing has. We will start by just using the standard size that typically goes for the Imperial bridges. See if that works. It may not be Imperial after all. So let's go ahead and try then with a metric, the kind that they use to adjust metric imported Mustang bridges. And yep, that is the one. I am just going to lower it down a couple hairs here to the point where I feel it's comfortable. Doesn't have to be drastic. I think the bass side was the more problematic side. It was just really, really high from the factory. And in addition, we are going to have to, because the pickups were set really, really high from the factory to the point where it was giving me intonation issues. So it's going to have to screw these pickups down a tad. We have got quite a bit of up bow here, like too much relief in the neck, and so that definitely is informing the overall uncomfortable feel that I'm getting from this neck. I definitely like the necks to be a bit straighter, so I wasn't expecting to have to do a setup right away. We didn't have to do this, remember. We didn't have to do this stuff to the Squier at all. From the factory, it was set pretty decently. Oh yeah, actually we did. We did have to adjust the truss rod a tiny bit. This is gonna feel even better once we straighten out that truss rod a bit. Now this is, again, this is very, very shocking because I'm being completely honest with you guys, but so far I'm having a little bit less than ideal of an experience here from the factory, at least. Another thing that I'm seeing here for sure is that the radius is slightly off. I'm just going to very quickly use my over the string gauge to make this quicker. But I can definitely see right now that the G saddle is definitely way too low. And these grubs, the little set screws I'm feeling here, feel really loose here from the factory. These definitely could benefit from some Loctite already. Our A saddle a little too low. And again, especially from the vibration of these thicker strings, much more intense vibration than you would be getting from, you know, normal guitar strings. I could definitely see these very, very loose set screws sinking. This is less than ideal. And also the D is also a bit low as well. A little too low. Yeah. And then we have to adjust now to G tiny bit more. Let's see where we're at. We're not going to apply any Loctite to this now because I do have to return this thing. But it already does feel a little bit better. Let's go ahead and tune up. Ooh. So you can hear that as a result of messing with those set screws there, that we are getting some nasty, nasty kind of vibrations that you don't really want to be getting. Okay, that little adjustment made it a bit better. So yeah, your mileage may vary depending on the kind of experience you have out of the box if you're buying one of these things brand new. But for sure, right now, we've already had to start doing a setup. And I feel like for me right now, with the radius, you know, more accurately set than before, I could try to potentially lower the bridge down more, but I really think the uncomfortable high action feeling is coming from the fact that there is way too much relief on this neck right now. So we're going to go ahead and capo this neck up and adjust the truss rod, which you know, for the vintage accurate lovers out there, it is nicely located at the heel of the neck here. But for folks who hate taking off the neck, this is undoubtedly going to be a bit of a nuisance. I'm going to go ahead and detune this thing, take the neck off, adjust the truss rod, put it back on, and then we are going to see where we're at after that with the overall feel, because so far, unfortunately, the overall unboxed experience of this has definitely needed a lot more of a setup than the classic vibe. So hopefully after doing these adjustments, I can sort of feel that increase in overall quality and features of this basics, especially again, seeing that this is basically a $1,500 version. So I'm just loosening everything up about 6 half turns. Sometimes actually so that the strings don't fly off of the treble side, I will use a second capo to capo up just the treble strings, and that usually helps, particularly with thinner strings. Might not have been an issue on this one, and I like to do it this way. Okay, just really supporting that join between the body and the neck here. And another funny thing that I do, I have these funny little time-saving tricks that I do sometimes. And one thing that I find myself doing a lot when I'm just adjusting the truss rod on these vintage style offsets is I'll just take a little rubber band here. This way I won't have to completely reinsert every single one of the screws. And I'll just put them around the screws like that. And that way the screws stay in place. Then I can just very easily now lift up my neck without too much drama here. Okay. It is a tight neck pocket here. Okay. And then we are just going to go ahead and tighten. I usually will only tighten a quarter of a turn. It was a pretty severe up bow in this case. So I'm going to do maybe a little bit more until it feels right to me. Just maybe a little bit more than a quarter turn. Okay. And then just very carefully sliding that neck back in. There was no shim inside of the neck pocket here. Do not believe that it needs one because the bridge is already fairly high, which tells me that most likely the neck pocket here is already angled. So now just very quickly remove my rubber bands, and I am using the lowest torque setting, slowing down very significantly on that final approach. Okay. So we are good. Okay. And then I am going to go ahead and retighten my strings here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I count because it just, if you've seen some of my other videos, these are things to help me save time. Okay. So we can pull off that tape that just ended up helping also to keep these strings from jumping out at the bridge side, and have to just readjust our string spacing a tiny bit here. Overall looking pretty good. So that definitely does feel a lot better action wise now. And we are still getting a little bit of rattle, unfortunately. So we're just going to narrow that string spacing just a tad. So let's double check again. You can hear those really bad sympathetic vibrations coming from that saddle, and there's not much I can do about that aside from make it so the string spacing is wider ever so slightly. I kind of wanted to avoid that. I wanted a little bit narrower of a string spacing, but that's the only way it's going to hold that saddle in place right now. So yeah, let's see. That definitely improved it. We're getting it a bit on the B as well. So it's just about negotiating here what is going to result in a more stable setup. I think one side of the saddle is a little bit lower. I try to make sure that these saddles, some people like to do them so that they're all kind of curving into each other. I like to set the radius so that each saddle is about as level and straight as possible, and then make the radius follow that way. I find that it helps with the rattles and stuff overall on these. I gotta say, so that bit of work that we did definitely improved the overall feel. It definitely feels a lot higher quality. It definitely feels more comfortable to play right now. The neck is funny in comparison to the Classic Vibe, and I haven't even gone and measured the neck thickness yet. But overall, I feel like this has a more significant C shape to it overall. It feels like it has more shoulder to it than the Classic Vibe neck, which is a little bit of a flatter feeling. And when we measured that one out, remember that the specs on the Classic Vibe, I think were about 0.83 at the first fret, and then 0.91 or 0.92 at the 12th. And so I am going to go ahead and guess before we even take the calipers out that this one is going to be noticeably chunkier than that neck. We're also going to check with our calipers in just a moment here how thick the strings are. I am pretty darn sure just by feel alone that these are noticeably thicker strings than what comes stock on the Classic Vibe. And that's not to say that it's uncomfortable, but it definitely overall makes it a little bit more challenging to play in a guitar kind of style. Right, this is a lot closer to that of traditional bass strings here. But yeah, very, very comfortable now that we've got the action set. Unfortunately, we were running into a lot of buzz emanating from the bridge because of those loose set screws. Let's just go ahead and check the neck thickness here. Okay. As we did with the Classic Vibe, we are going to use the little strap button trick where we use a strap button like this here. We're going to measure this with the calipers and then zero it out from there and then measure our neck. And we're just going to slide that in right around our first fret. So I'm getting a similar reading, about 0.83 at the first fret here. Oh yeah, that's definitely a bit more significant as compared to the Classic Vibe, which was 0.91 at the 12th. This is 0.98, almost 0.99. So yeah, that is significantly chunkier as you move up the neck there. Now, moving on to our strings. Wow, yeah, that's a significantly heavier set of strings as well. We've got 100 for the low E. We've got a 0.079 for the A, 0.065 for the D, 0.042 for the G, 0.034 for the B, and 0.024. So the same on the treble, 0.024 for our high E, but significantly chunkier strings for the bass side, which is making the, again, the overall playing experience here just a bit more bass-like and not as easy to kind of fret and do chords, particularly in the lower registers, because these strings are just really heavy. So yeah, I wasn't really getting any fret buzz anymore, not really getting bridge buzz or bridge rattles here anymore with just the very, very light setup that we gave this thing, making sure again that our radius is on point, making sure that the action is set. And just for your reference right now, I'm going to use my handy dandy Fret Guru XT, the mother of all gauges. And then I'll just do a quick 12 fret measurement to show you. So I am right about 60 thousandths at the 12th fret, and also about 60 thousandths. I'd say about 65 thousandths on the high E. I'm going to check one more time. I'd say we're probably about 65 thousandths on both sides, actually. So pretty even. That's not bad, particularly for a bass or a bass 6. Let's just go over a couple of other housekeeping things. Let's find out the outputs of these pickups here. And then let's also find out whether or not we've got a lot of high frets as compared to what we found on the Classic Vibe, which overall, especially for a, a $500 bass 6, did really, really well with that test. Again, going to use the Fret Guru XT, which also serves as a fret rocker. No high frets at all along our low E string. Let's move on to our A, and I think that overall these frets are leveled pretty good because again, we were not getting any fret buzz at all after we had properly set the truss rod. And again, we are almost all the way through along the A, and I'm not getting any rocking on any of these frets, which is great. Moving on now to the D. So I think maybe it's safe to assume that perhaps on this one, they actually did glue down these frets, perhaps, or just keep them in better humidified conditions. I mean, it did come with that really hefty humidifying pack, right? That was sandwiched between these strings. Nothing along our D. Moving on now to the G. I remember on the Classic Vibe, we found the most high spots along the B string of that one. But again, I'm more than halfway now past the G, and I am not getting any rocking on these frets at all. So that definitely speaks to the overall quality of the fit and finish of this thing as being very, very good, which is great, especially because this is a decent chunk of money, right? It's not an insignificant amount. We are now along the B. There was no rocking along the G string before. And more than halfway now. Okay, we found one spot here at the 11th fret. Then we will do our high E now. That's crazy. I was expecting there to be a bit more, to be honest with you. But it is crazy that we only found one high spot across this entire fretboard. Wow. Color me impressed. Color me frigging impressed. Seriously. Okay, so the last test that we're going to do very quickly here is just the output that we are getting on each one of our pickups. So we're just going to make sure that our volume and tone is all the way up. Okay, so we are getting about 6.31 on the bridge pickup, 6.23 on the middle pickup, and 6.19 on the neck pickup. So that is a very well balanced set overall, with the lowest output being at the neck and the highest at the bridge. It's what you expect, right? So that's great. All right, so we are all plugged in here with this bad boy, and that right now is just the middle pickup by itself. We'll go through the motions exactly as we did last time, starting off with just the bridge pickup. Middle pickup by itself. Already, this is definitely sounding a lot more bass-like to me. Again, I'm pretty sure that has to do with the thicker strings. The pickups definitely sound better to my ears. And that sounds really, really nice. And I just want you guys to pay attention very quickly. You can hear that 60 cycle hum for sure. It's not horrible, but it's definitely very, very present here. I'd say a little bit more present than I typically get with Jaguar pickups. And, you know, you're getting noise canceling with the neck and middle. You're getting noise canceling with the bridge and middle. No noise canceling when you've selected just the neck and bridge, unlike on a traditional you know, like Jaguar 2 pickup setup. The overall sound, I definitely am liking a bit more than the Classic Vibe for sure. And actually, before we move on to doing chords, let's just see how well it held its tuning, and pretty decently. E went the tiniest bit flat. A is good. D went a little flat. G went a little flat. B is good. High E was basically good, the tiniest bit flat. So yeah, so we're gonna go to our bridge pickup now. And we're gonna thin it out with the bass cut switch and just do a couple of chords, kick up the reverb on the amp a little bit for the vibes. That sounds nice. Let's try it with the bridge and middle. And just now was the first time that I tried using the vibrato, and I definitely feel like the spring tension on this vibrato as set from the factory is definitely more substantial. It's more responsive than the crummy, janky vibrato on the Classic Vibe, and that is absolutely no surprise to me. These Vintera II vibrato units are overall pretty good. Not as good as an AVRI unit, but it's up there. I would say that it's definitely up there. We're gonna move back to just the bridge pickup for playing a couple of open chords up here. Very, very cool. Yeah, I mean, the more I am playing this right now, the more I am definitely feeling the increased overall build quality here. Again, we had a bit more of a steeper learning curve, you know, having to adjust a lot more stuff than we did on the Classic Vibe, but I do feel like this definitely has a bit more refined of an overall feeling to the quality of it. And let's just see so far with just that little bit of vibrato that we played. Did it stay? Did it go completely out of tune? B went a tiny bit flat. I meant the E went a bit flat. A is good. D is good. G is good. B is good. and the E is good. So no, really the same thing I think that we experience with the classic vibe. Maybe the nut slot over on our low E here just needs to be widened ever so slightly, lubricated for sure. And just looking down here, I'm seeing that the bridge is staying fairly center. Yeah, I don't see it straying. It's definitely rocking, but boy, that is a stark difference from how stable this overall bridge is as compared to, say, the Japanese 90s one that I demoed a couple weeks or months back. That bridge would not stay in the center for the life of it. And we were using even thicker strings than these ones on that bridge. I also am enjoying the feel of the vintage tall frets on here. They are not quite as tall. They're probably about 10 thousandths of an inch shorter than the narrow tall frets on the classic vibe. And I like that personally, especially as a fan of vintage size frets overall, with these only being about 5 thousandths of an inch taller than vintage size frets. I like feeling a bit closer to the fretboard when I fret. So I really love that feel overall. And of course, as you folks probably know from having seen some of my other videos, if you've seen them, 7¼ inch radius is my personal favorite when it comes to offset guitars. So this feels like home to me. I definitely prefer it to the 9.5 inch radius that is on the classic vibe, but both of them overall feel good. I just prefer this. This thing feels awesome. I'm not gonna lie. I'm really, really digging it, especially after that truss rod adjustment, after making all those other the bridge adjustments and things. I'm really, really overall digging the feel. I dig the neck profile of this thing. Yes, it definitely is a bit chunkier. It reminds me a lot more of playing my bass. This neck is definitely not as fat as my P bass neck. This does remind me somewhat of a jazz bass, but little bit wider actually at the nut than a jazz bass. Let's do just the neck pickup. No bass cut this time. That sounds wow. Yeah, I am in love with this thing. So now let's just go ahead and share our overall thoughts about this thing. Uh, Again, in comparison to the classic vibe, I think out of the box, the classic vibe was a lot smoother of an overall experience. I thought the classic vibe played really, really well. It sounded good. It was overall very, very stable. This one here, because it has more vintage specs in place, such as, the threaded saddle bridge, there's going to be a bit more of a learning curve, a little bit more with regards to adjustments. Definitely is a bit more difficult to adjust the truss rod on this because the truss rod nut is located at the heel rather than at the headstock. So that requires careful pulling off of the neck. Uh, it does have the same issues as the classic vibe, where I do feel like the low E slot on the nut could benefit from a little bit of widening, right? And definitely some lubrication over there. The vibrato experience on this is far superior to the one on the classic vibe. Very, very stable. The bridge on this thing stays perfectly center, even with moderate vibrato use. And I really dig the strings that they put on here. This is a 24-200 gauge string set. And it's significantly thicker than those found on the classic vibes, and definitely gives a bit more of a bass feel overall. I really love the neck profile on this. It's about the same thickness at the first fret as the Squier one, but noticeably chunkier at the 12th fret on this, with this one being at about 0.99 inches, whereas that one was about 0.91 inches. And yeah, this thing is just really, really great. If you can get over the initial hurdles out of the box, and just can figure out how to dial in a good setup, I don't think really anything on this bridge needs to be replaced. And that includes even this bridge, as much of a pain as it can be to folks, a little bit of Loctite purple on some of these, particularly the saddle height adjustment screws, maybe also the overall bridge height adjustment screws while you're at it, is going to help to future proof it and help you with rattles and things. If you don't feel like doing that, I think you can get, you know, a cheaper 52.5 millimeter Mustang bridge, and put those saddles to replace these ones, and then you would have a nice vintage style bass 6 bridge, not too dissimilar from the more expensive and also hard to get stay Trem bridge. As you saw, the Offset Guitars UK bridge on the Squier bass 6 definitely did improve that experience overall. But yeah, I think that this one here is worth $1,000 more than the Squier. I'm gonna go ahead and say no. Um, I think that the Squier is a fantastic option for $500. And if this is going to be somewhat of a niche instrument for you, something that you are most likely not going to be playing a lot, but just going to be recording, you know, here and there, I think the Squier is a perfect option for that. But if you are going to be making a main instrument out of this, or something that you think you're going to get a lot of mileage from, you don't want to have to swap out anything or upgrade any of the parts. You want good sounding pickups from the jump, higher quality electronics from the jump, and just overall higher quality components, right? And build quality. Then yeah, this Vintera II Bass 6 is definitely that. In fact, I would say that this is it's on par. It's on par with the Japanese one, and definitely with regards to the stability of some of this hardware, it's even better than that. Maybe the husk is not as good as those old Japanese ones, but overall the fit and finish on this thing is really, really great. And again, one high fret or one high spot on one fret for the entire fretboard, that speaks volumes to the quality control. And that's obviously, your mileage is going to vary, whether you're buying one new, whether you're buying one used, and what conditions that Bass 6 was kept in. That is regardless of which model you opt for. But yeah, I love this thing. I think I was perusing uh on Zounds before, seeing if I could potentially find some open box deals, because I think from here I'm going to be keeping an eye out, because I really love the Bass 6. I still to this day regret getting rid of my vintage modified one, and I think I would just try to find ways to utilize a Bass 6 more in my own creative, like, writing and also recording process. I just really, really love this thing. It's so fun to play. It definitely can do the bass. It can do like baritone-ish guitar kind of sounds. It's really a cool jack of all trades. It can't replace, obviously, my P bass. I've tried that vintage modified one that I had many years ago, was completely decked out. Like, it had the pure vintage 65 pickups, it had the AVRI vibrato, it had a stay trem bridge, it had Goto tuners, bone nut, everything. And still I ended up getting rid of it. But I think if I end up getting one from here, I definitely would want to utilize it more to justify, obviously, that purchase, and also just have fun with it, right? Maybe maybe finally my band will be like, okay, you know what? This would be a cool song for the bass six to go on the album, or to play on a couple of live songs. So I just want to thank Zounds again for sponsoring this video. If you aren't in the know about Zounds or never shop there, it's my personal favorite retailer, and I've used them to split up my gear purchases into like 6 or 12 installments. There's never any interest. There's no credit check. There's no paperwork. They make it super duper easy for you to be able to get the gear at a price that you can afford over time without any shenanigans that you will get from a lot of the other retailers that use, you know, services like Affirm or Synchrony, which, as I said before, is essentially highway robbery. So yeah, thanks again to the folks at Zounds for sponsoring this video. Anyway, I hope this shootout between these two help you to make a better informed decision of which Bass 6 model is right for you. I really love them both. I will definitely say that this one ended up coming out on top for me overall after, you know, dialing in the setup. But kudos to the Squier Classic Vibe Bass 6 for being the overall easier and more pleasant, immediate out of the box experience. Both of them are fantastic and you cannot go wrong with either. If you haven't already, please hit that like and subscribe button as well as the notification bell. Be notified of new videos as soon as they drop. And don't forget to follow Totally Wired Guitars for more offset guitars buying tips.